This is Independent Voice, and I am Mame.
Thank you so very much, Ismael, for being here. Welcome to Independent Voice. I am absolutely honored to welcome you to our program. I'm so excited to have the opportunity to sit back and listen to you sharing this incredible experience and life journey with us. So you talked about you did all this and then the world of work began. So let's take it from there.
So I was ready for the work world. Okay. So when I reached that level was the waking up period. What next now? You see, because the pre-programmed mind that I had was returning home. That was not possible because Mengistu was still there. So the trouble started then, because in France, I was in a student status. I was not yet a resident, permanent resident, or things like that. I was a student. Voilà. So I had to find a job and quit the country, period. But then, what kind of work? You see, I had the diploma, I had what it takes, but where, with whom, how? And in my thinking, becoming a politician or joining a group of politicians, that was out of question. I hated that part because of what I told you. Business, I didn't have any clue about it. The little from my readings and my own word understanding, I didn't want to take a product here and sell it more expensive to others. That was exit as well. So at the end of the day, I said, what you saw there in Ethiopia was suffering of many, whether it was in the city or later what we were hearing, all those youngsters who went to teach the Gabares, the peasants, were in some areas burned and killed and things like that. Then we had this Ethiopian famine that had marked our mental. So I said, the best that you can do is give back to society. You see?
Wow.
You managed so far, maybe by chance, maybe by resilience, I don't know, whatever we call it. In those days, naturally, what came to my mind was, you made it this far, give back. Okay, in whatever means, so that's how I discovered the NGO field. While I was in university, I was also working, here and there, and I was working with elderly people, with handicapped people. In those days, it was well paid because not many people wanted to do those kind of things. It had prepared me for what I would be going to do next. And in the city where I ended up doing my biotech, it was Lyon. It was near Grenoble, the next big city. And there they have an annual forum in a huge park that is in the middle of the city, where they invite all humanitarian organizations, a lot of musicians from Africa, from everywhere, and they have this feast for humanity, And in the school where I did biotech, they were distributing prospectus where they were looking for volunteers to come and help the setup of this thing. And that's how I went to this place. And I made acquaintance with, I don't know, bunch of international organizations, And yes, I was helping the organizers, but then you meet also with all these people. And what was amazing is that it was not my diplomas that attracted most of these people. It was my ability to talk to many people who were there, who were coming from everywhere, Africa, Arab countries, France, Anglophones, and I could speak with all of them.
Because of your language abilities,
the language abilities, So two or three of them gave me their cards and said, you need to come and see us in our offices. But I didn't have any clue of what they wanted or what they had identified. This is now that I can tell you this. I said, okay. And then when the feast was finished and the Monday came, I started calling. I said, appointment. And the first place I went was called Handicap International, And we discussed, it was the director of operations. And I told him also that I did biotech, but while doing the biotech, I was helping handicapped people and elderly people. And I was hired on the spot. On the spot, they said, okay, we have a training starting here. It will take 15 days. You go through that training. I said, what for? Yeah, but you're hired. It's as a volunteer, of course, but volunteer with status. They pay you a few amount of money and you have a status to go everywhere in the world, etc. But I didn't have any clue about that. I just started the training. From that day on, I was going every morning there. So they teach you a lot of techniques and the way they work, their policies. And that's how, for the first mission, I was appointed directly back where? Djibouti.
Oh, wow.
That's why I was
all over again, huh?
That's why I was going to tell you, wait and see, So at the beginning, I was so amazed. I said, Djibouti? Yes, you're going there as the head of mission. And I said, why Djibouti? that
Talk about the trauma, right?
And they said, no, we need you there. You know the languages, you know the place, you know the people. And that's how I started in 1988 in Djibouti.
Wow.
So the excitement, first plane to Djibouti, and voila, started work. And it was quite interesting. But what I am about to tell you is something also that we will have to come back to towards the end when we will be closing up.
Of course.
Because as I started, you have to go and present your credential letter to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Okay. And I was new to the work environment, especially international, And Djibouti had still, even if they got their independence, each minister has a French advisor. So there were still French presence, and they had also a huge military base in Djibouti to surveil all the region there. The Bab el-Mandeb, Somalia, Ethiopia, the Red Sea, all this is under the big eyes of France. So when they saw my credential letter with my name and then nationality Ethiopian, it became a problem.
Uh-oh.
For who? For the French people.
How
The
so?
the advisors. So they told the foreign affairs minister, you know, if Handicap International can bring an Ethiopian here, instead of what they used to do, French or Belgian people, yeah, why would they bring Ethiopian? Why don't they give it to a Djiboutian?
Oh, wow.
You see? And the minister, of course, accepted. He said, yes, if they can do that, why don't they bring a Djiboutian, you know? And so I received a letter that my accreditation was rejected.
Wow.
You see? So I went.
Did they give any reason at all?
That's where I'm coming, because the thing is, when I was appointed and I had to bring my credential, the person I'm replacing was still there yet, you know, because we have a handover process. Yeah. And she was a French, blue-eyed, blonde. Okay.
Right.
And so I was in town when this rejection thing happened, and she had received a phone call from this French advisor who is in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and telling her, your institution had made a big error, you know. You shouldn't have appointed this person as an Ethiopian, especially. Don't you know the regional the touchiness about this? And while I was out of the office, she receives this call and she calls the headquarters. And the headquarters guy was completely upset because we had clicked, you know. So I came back to the office. I didn't have any clue of what happened. I get in, I see all the team seated in the sitting room and waiting for me with sadness and what's up? What happened? Yeah, you know, the Minister of Foreign Affairs had called. I said, Of course, I was shocked, but, you know, I have to play also the head of mission, you know. I said, okay. So we have to call the headquarters. And she says, I have called. And then I just went mad. And I said, you know, you're no more the head of mission. By virtue of respecting your replacement, you had to wait for me and we would eventually call together. But I should have called, not you. You know? So that created a crisis. But then we called the headquarters and the guy said, no, Djibouti will not dictate our nomination process. I will come. So the next plane I'm in, and you can prepare all the appointments, not only with the Minister of Foreign Affairs, up to the presidency. So he was kind of supportive, you know, but if he was not doing it only for me, he was doing it also for the dignity of the institution.
Of course.
Voilà. So we started preparing the appointments, and that's now where I'll open brackets. Okay, and bear with me, okay? You remember when I told you about dad brothers, one who went to Djibouti, one who went to Somalia? Both of them in their respective areas, they have also evolved. So the one in Somalia, he did economics, then went to the States, had his PhD, came back, and he was working in the foreign affairs of Somalia. And he's the brother of my dad, okay?
Oh, wow.
The other one who went to Djibouti, I told you he had joined the Liberation Front. So in those days, the French had imprisoned him for about 5 or 6 years. And then they released him. He went to Saudi Arabia. And then when Djibouti got her independence, the new regime called him in and nominated him as the first ambassador of Djibouti in Saudi Arabia and the rest of the Gulf. And this is also a brother of Dad. And Dad was diplomat in Khartoum. So that is the context in which I am now getting in Djibouti, you know?
Wow.
So I close the brackets now. In the meantime, I get in touch with my father's brother, who is a diplomat now in Saudi Arabia. I said, what's happening in your country? They don't want my accreditation.
Mm.
And he was amazed, you know, he said, what? I said, yes. So he says, you go and see XYZ.
Mm-hmm.
XYZ, among them is the current president of Djibouti, Ismael Omar Gelle, who used to be, in those days, chief of cabinet in the presidency of Djibouti. So you see how the word is small?
You know, full circle.
So I took the appointments. Our president came from Lyon, and we went to the Foreign Affairs, to the Ministry of Health, because we were working with them, and then to the presidency. When we got into the office of this person, he had already received the phone call from my uncle, you know, who was in Saudi Arabia. So we were welcome in the office, and the presentations were made. And Ismael started talking and said, Monsieur le Président, Mr. President of Handicap International, there is no need for this meeting because this young man is our kid. His father used to be my teacher.
Oh, wow.
This kind of anecdotes. And yeah, we went out of that room with my accreditation having been accepted. And and the president, the next flight, he left and I started my work. So what I wanted to show you here is even, not only in Europe, but even in our own continent, this kind of racism is being fueled. By who? By the Westerns.
Wow.
You see, because if it was among us, I don't know what would have happened. But the first bullet came from the French advisor, and talking about the fact that you shouldn't nominate an Ethiopian because of the regional turmoil that it can create. Why it would create a turmoil, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So when the president left and I started, I went into a grudge like hell. And I said, I have to show these people that a Black man can also work like hell and bring results.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how my whole humanitarian activities started with grudge, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And in no time, I was known everywhere, in the newspaper, in the TV, in the radio. Boom, boom, boom. The project was doubled. I became crazy. I was not sleeping. I was not doing anything but just work. Because, you know, you've touched, you know, your dignity has been shaken, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And God does things in his own ways. At the same time, the whole region started shaking. Somalia collapsed. I was there. Ethiopia collapsed with Mengistu being chased, 1991, So I went to Somalia, did an explore mission, boom, implemented a project. Then as soon as the new regime came to Ethiopia, I went in as well, without fear this time, and established also a project there. I even went to Eritrea. And all of a sudden, from where I was, they nominated me regional coordinator.
Yeah.
The circumstances, geopolitical circumstances, made it possible for me to, in one hand, excel, but also do more than expected. You see?
Mm-hmm.
And going through all those things, of course, the happening was a pleasant happening, for sure. But all this comes also with a price,
I bet. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because, for example, when we first went to Somalia, it was Somaliland, the northern part. And the Somaliland, there were this group called SNM, the Somali National Movement, SNM.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They were supported by Mengistu, and they were in the refugee camps in Ogaden, fighting Ziad Barre's regime in Somalia.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So by then, when this turmoil became, they had won back Somaliland, but it was not yet stable. And so the army of Ziad Barre was chased out, going south to Mogadishu. But these people, the Ziad Barre military, first they destroyed 80% of the cities in Somaliland. Okay? And when the war was ongoing, many of the Somalilanders, they had gone to Ethiopia in the refugee camps that were called Hartishek, and you heard about them maybe in those days. These places became cities in Ogaden now. There are no more refugee camps because people stayed there for many years. And we used to work also in Hartishek, with the same population.
Okay.
So when the SNM took Somaliland, controlled it, people wanted to come back home. Okay? And we were fighting against that massive coming back because the Ziad Barre regime, military, not only had destroyed the cities, but they had mined the fields as well, the roads, okay, and wealth. Each Somali mother in those days when they were fleeing to Hartishek, in their mind, they will come back one day. Okay? So the house that they were living, at the door, the main gate's door, they would dig and put their gold apparatuses in there, bury it, put a stone, and go to the refugee camp. Because in the refugee camp, they can be robbed and what have you. So it was their saving. The Ziad Barre regime military discovered that there was this kind of practice. So they digged in each house in front of the doors and they found the gold.
Wow.
But they didn't take only the gold. They put booby traps and mines instead.
Oh. Wow.
Okay. So for us, when we came to do the exploratory mission, when you do an explo, you reach out to everyone, the elderly, the peasants, the military, the militia, everyone, okay? Mm-hmm. And they had warned us what the military had done, you know? So we had hired from France and Britain demining professionals, mm-hmm. okay? And we were telling the SNM not to allow anyone to come unless first we identify the mined meal mm-hmm. fields. Mm-hmm. And second, to have a proper demining operation, okay? Mm-hmm. But people will not listen. You know, we had identified things were kind of isolated, mm-hmm. And we would not allow anyone to go in, etc. But the refugees, they go by foot, you know, from everywhere, and in front of them they have their herds, camels and goats and things like that. And at the beginning, because they didn't listen to us, it was their goats and camels that exploded.
Oh, wow. Mm.
You see? Mm. So ultimately they reached the city, but then they understood that it was really, really dangerous, you know? Mm-hmm. So they were not going to their houses because of fear of bombs. So they were doing some makeshift houses where we were authorizing them to go because it was demined or something like that. That's how we started in Somalia. You see? Oh. And that is a big price to pay for a person like me in those days, inexperimented. Okay? First responsibility as head of mission. Head of mission, it doesn't mean just you are head. No. Yeah. You are responsible for your team. You are responsible for the people you're helping. You are responsible for everything. Mm-hmm. So you
and
don't
that's your first experience in it.
You don't sleep, you know, you feel everything. You feel for your people, you feel for everything. Almost it's like you are on dynamo, you know, you never sleep. 1 hour is enough, you know. And we had built, you know, this huge of surgical platforms and orthopedic tools and physiotherapy places. And we were receiving people who were booby-trapped, you know, their hands blown, their faces blown. Some, of course, died. But those who were handicapped, they were badly handicapped.
No, but
you see, and we had to provide all this cares, and at the same time demine and raise awareness. And that became a huge project. And yet that place was not yet safe. Because they just got in. So there was no government, proper government. They auto-proclaimed their independence, and clanically they were fighting among themselves. And we were also targeted. You see? So security-wise, you don't have it. Yet, humanitarianly, you need to reach out to people. It was one of the most complex missions I have ever been in, you know, and it started that way. So you gain on-the-job training that is, in one hand, tremendous, but at the same time traumatic. You see? So you remember we talked about our trauma,
right?
Leaving Ethiopia. It's another layer of trauma. Coming there, you see? So yes, you become resilient. Yes, you become strong, but for your inner self, you're wounded. You're really badly wounded. You know, so you fight again for your survival, because the responsibility that is put on your head is not only to survive for yourself like it was when I was leaving Ethiopia. This time around, the responsibility is for everyone.
It's compounded.
Yes, you have your team, the security is your problem. You have the project, the security of the project is your problem. You have to have the ability of negotiating with all parties, show your white flag, tell them, no, we abide only by the humanitarian international law. We don't interfere in your politics. We don't. And you have to teach all this because these people do not have any clue about it. Yeah. Nowadays, after so many years, yes, there are people who can talk about human rights and talk about all this international humanitarian law, etc. But in those days, I can tell you 100%, very few. Those who went to big universities, maybe. You know? If it was even their field of interest, you know, because those who went to law school, etc., naturally will know about it. But those who did some other studies, they don't even know about it, you know.
Or maybe don't even care.
And they don't care because they had a nation to build, you know.
Got it.
You see? So it was a tremendous experience in all aspects, humanly, professionally, in your belief in what you're doing as well, the giving back thing, that is when it becomes really concrete. You know now what you're doing for others, the sacrifice that you are paying, even if you don't call it sacrifice, you know, but it is. But
it is sacrifice.
Yeah, because you're taking everything in to give the best part of you to others. So you're hurting yourself anyways. Just again to open a little bit a bracket, with this experience in Somalia, Djibouti, okay, it was more stable, but you see other things there as well. When we got into Ethiopia, the first thing with which we were confronted was not TPLF or them taking the power. We don't care about that, you see. In those days, we were even happy because we were saying, oof, the tyrant has left, you know. But immediately you go to your job, and our job, the first thing that we met was all the casualties of the so many years of war. More than 20, 30 years of war, Eritrea first, and then TPLF, and all the other opposition groups, so Ogaden and Oromo. And we were recuperating the casualties because there were so many wounded people, handicapped people, damaged bodies in all sense, you know. They didn't die, but it is almost as if they died, you know. So we had to open centers as well in Nazareth for the Ethiopian part, in Wukro, in Tigray for the Tigrayan part, in Nakfa in Eritrea for the Eritrean part, you know, and so on. So
wow.
that bracket I opened is with these very violent and experience from the go. What it had embedded in me was my hate for wars. It embedded in me the hate for the fight for power, the hate for people sheltering themselves into their ethnic base or their clanic base, or, you know, like Djibouti. Djibouti, they said, why an Ethiopian came here? You know? They could have chosen an Ethiopian. Well, why would we go there?
Right. Why does it matter?
Voila. Let's see first if the work is being done. If the work is not done, chase him. You know, that will be more rational. But just because he's Ethiopian, don't pronounce even the word of he's not needed, because not only you wounded that person, but you ridicule yourself as well, you know? So that was the first hate. The second hate was when I saw those booby traps that were put for the mothers, the Somali mothers. How can a human being, okay, he can steal the gold.
Right. But why leave that trap in there?
Why replace it with a booby trap? How is that mind functioning? He's not a human being. He's just a devil.
Knowing that somebody's going to come look for that gold, whether it's a woman, whether it's a child, whether anybody.
And a sister of his, because they're all Somalis.
Right.
They came all from one branch. It was just a political divide based on the colonialism frontiers, because the South was Italian, the North was British, and that's the difference that made them fight like that. Okay, they fought, the city, the country was destroyed. On top of that,
they were destroying themselves.
Booby traps
for
the kids and the moms. Because when a mom goes to get her gold, it's to rebuild her life.
Right.
Sell that gold, rebuild the house, and bring up her kids properly. That was her saving, you know?
Yes.
She has her baby on her back. When boom, it explodes, it's not only her, it's also the baby that is wounded. You see? So when you see such things, you become just so disappointed.
Right. You question humanity.
Humanity. Thank you. At that age, first experience, first violent type of approach in this kind of environment, you know, and then you go to Ethiopia, your own country, that you longed for many years, you know, almost 2 decades, because Mengistu was there for 17 years, you know. So you go, yes. First of all, the feeling is my own brothers and sisters, because me, the Oromo or the Tigre, I didn't care, because that was not how I was brought up. But those I was seeing resembled me, and they are me. All cut off, you know, legs missing, eyes missing, arms missing, and not 1, 2, 3, 4, no, in thousands.
Wow.
So you sit back at night when you finish your Explo mission. At night, you sit back and you say, what happened to humanity?
Right. And that's, by the way, another layer of trauma.
Of course it is, you know, but it is also your conscience is put at a hard test, you know, because I was 2 fingers away from resigning because of the absurdity of war, because of the devilness of this kind of fraternal wars. It's not even 2 countries fighting against each other. It's 2 brothers and sisters fighting each other, you see? So when today we come to the Ethiopian situation that we will talk later more extensively, for me, it's bis repetita. It's again the same thing, you know, because initially what I saw was between brothers also, and today it's again between brothers. Why is humanity not learning from history? In the same country, not to go far, because if we go far, we can talk about the Second World War, the First World War that killed so many millions of people for nothing as well. The Europeans, they sat down and said, never this again. That thing is written in our history books. Why our intellectual people who are fighting didn't read that and avoid this kind of inter-brotherly and sisterly wars and killings and, handicapping people forever, for life. You see?
Mm-hmm.
And now I close the chapter. So that's how the first missions start.
Thanks again for joining us. This is Mame, and this is Independent Voice.